President Trump in the past may have been the most outspoken in his support of abortion. When President Trump was considering running for president on the Reform Party ticket in the late 90s, he did an interview with NBC's Tim Russert in which he described himself as very pro-choice. Here is then potential candidate Trump.
Partial birth abortion, the eliminating of abortion in the third trimester, big issue in Washington. Would President Trump ban partial birth abortion?
Well, look, I'm very pro-choice. I hate the concept of abortion. I hate it. I hate everything it stands for. I cringe when I listen to people debating the subject. But I just believe in choice. And again, it may be a little bit of a New York background because there is some different attitude in different parts of the country. And, I was raised in New York and grew up and work and everything else in New York City. But I am strongly for choice, and yet I hate the concept of abortion.
But you would not ban it?
No.
Keep in mind, by the way, they're not talking about abortion in the first trimester here or the second trimester. They're talking about late-term partial birth abortion. This is when the baby looks exactly like a baby and you kill it as he's coming out of his mother's womb. And President Trump says, I would have kept that legal. That is a very, very pro-abortion position. And yet in the 90s, it was a popular position. And look, I come from New York. I was in New York in the 90s. This was, I think, the mainstream idea. And actually, it was a former governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, who came up with the excuse President Trump is using there, which is, I personally hate abortion, but publicly I support abortion on demand without apology whenever you want. So people throw this in President Trump's face. I think the fact that Trump went from being very pro-choice to the most pro-life president ever illustrates a central truth of the pro-life movement. So President Trump in the 90s says, I'm very pro-choice, I support partial birth abortion as a matter of the law, and I hate it personally, but I support it politically. A lot of people held that view. I know a lot of people who held that view. Then he changed his mind. I think it is great when people change their mind on the question of abortion. I once defended abortion. For years, when I was a teenager, when I was ignorant, more ignorant, I defended abortion. Then I realized abortion is indefensible. So now I'm pro-life. It actually happened in Washington, D.C. I had a conversation with a bioethicist who was a teacher of mine in a summer program, and she asked me my views on abortion, and I said, I think it's fine, and I gave all these dumb arguments, and she shut down each and every one of them, and I had my eyes opened on the subject. I'm not the only one. Some of the most prominent voices in support of abortion have flipped and become some of the most prominent voices in support of life when they examined the evidence, when they saw the reality of abortion. I'm talking about Norma Mccorvey. You might not recognize that name, but you would recognize her pseudonym, which is Jane Roe, the woman who was used by opportunistic lawyers in Roe versus Wade, the case that 47 years ago invented the fictional constitutional right to abortion. That woman became one of the most prominent pro-life advocates in the country. She said that her participation in Roe versus Wade, her allowing herself to be used by those predator lawyers, was the biggest regret of her life. How about Dr. Bernard Nathanson? Dr. Bernard Nathanson was the founder of NARAL. That was the National Abortion Rights League. They've changed what the letters mean over the years, but it remains the most prominent pro-abortion advocacy organization in the country, I suppose, other than Planned Parenthood. That guy, co-founder of NARAL, became a very prominent pro-life advocate because he saw the reality of abortion, and he also exposed a lot of the lies that the abortion industry tells you. Like, for instance, they would say before Roe versus Wade, 5,000 women a year were dying from back alley abortions. Turns out that's completely made up. As Bernard Nathanson said, that they plucked that number out of thin air. It just sounded good. Actually, when you look at the numbers, you're talking about a couple dozen or a few dozen women who died from back alley abortions. And as a percentage of the abortion procedures done in states where abortion was legal and where it was illegal, it was no less safe than legal abortions at that time. It was just a complete lie peddled by the abortion industry. Dr. Bernard Nathanson became a huge pro-life advocate. Abby Johnson, Abby Johnson is the focus of that movie Unplanned. Abby Johnson worked for Planned Parenthood. She was being promoted up the ranks. Then she saw the reality of abortion. Now she is a major pro-life advocate. We have changed our minds on that subject. It's important to be able to change your minds when new evidence presents itself. And every single day, the evidence becomes clearer on the side of life. Thank you for tuning into the Daily Wire, one of the fastest growing conservative media outlets in the country. If you enjoyed this video, and really, even if you didn't, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you don't miss out on any of our content.